If you've been inside the anime manga community for a couple of months, and straight farther than the Naruto, Jujutsu Kaisens, and My Hero Academias, and you actually tried to read a manga, you probably heard about the manga series that is considered to be the best in the whole damn world. A series so legendary that we can still feel its influence, even to this day, in games like Elden Ring and Dragon's Dogma. A series full of magnificent character work, jaw-dropping art, and arguably the best written character in media, alongside BoJack Horseman. This horse needs his own video. That series being Berserk. No matter what happens, humanity has come to the agreement that Berserk is the best manga in existence, a conversation about it normally going like this. Dude, One Piece is awesome, it's the greatest story ever told, and it's going to be regarded as a classic in literature, like Homer's Odyssey is today, and I can't believe all of this comes from the head of just one dude! Yeah, man! But Berserk is the best manga, right? Oh yeah, no questions about it. Or, dude, finally, I finished both Full Metal Alchemist anime. I love how the story is told and the cinematic use of the medium in the 2003 adaptation, and the magnificent story and character work of the Brotherhood adaptation. And oh my god, what about those fight scenes? The animation and action coordination is just badass and powerful. Clearly the best anime in existence. Yeah, like Berserk is the best manga, right? Oh yeah, no questions about it, my dude. Have you read it?
It's
oh my
so
god, I thought
good.
Griffith was a girl at first, right? Right?
Sir, this is a Wendy's.
And like any manga, there are a lot of fans that really want to see the story adapted into an anime. And if you've seen or read Bakuman, not Bakugan, you know that your manga turning into an anime is like a milestone. It's something magical that doesn't happen to anyone. I mean, in today's anime landscape, I think it's more likely to happen because of the sheer popularity of the medium. But Berserk is something special. And to this day, we have two different adaptations. The first one, of 97, being the closest we have to a real anime adaptation. It is incomplete, but nor is the manga. Rest in peace, King. And it takes some things out of the story, but it is a good adaptation. And then we have the 2016 adaptation, and well, we don't talk about that one. I respect animators, I don't have the skill to do what they do, but this is not it, Chief. It's not what we had in mind at all. And to this day, we are still waiting for an adaptation of the manga about an edgy emo white boy with a giant sword that learns that revenge, it's kinda fucked up. So, one day I was watching YouTube while drawing for my next Pokemon video. It's coming out, I promise. And if you have immaculate taste as I do, you probably listen to the Trash Taste podcast. And in one episode, after hearing Connor talk about Vibe for a long time, they said this.
And I had this weird sensation of like, I am only going to really get to experience it in this form.
Yeah.
Berserk, and maybe there will be a Berserk adaptation down the line. But Berserk had this weird feeling.
It's unadaptable.
Right.
It is unadaptable.
Yeah, that's the same about everything gone until they make a good adaptation.
And that clip made me take a spiritual journey where they write, is Berserk not adaptable? And after reaching the top of the spiritual mountain and talking to the Astros, I came to the conclusion, nah, I think it's adaptable. We've seen what a good adaptation can look like, and now the animation industry has transitioned to digital media, making the process faster than having to work with cel animation. And at the same time, we have new tools to create the visuals that are needed for the work of this caliber. And we have a lot of popular R-rated series, making Berserk doesn't have to take any stops in its story, or mix it all up like the newest adaptation. There are really hard things to animate, like the monsters and the visuals Miura draws. Oh my god, look at that! And one of the most important things to animate at the beginning of the story is the war scenes. Drawing horses is hard, and drawing a lot of them and animating them while the warriors kill one another on top of them is just fucking hard. And to make the people feel the same thing they felt when they turned the page and saw stuff like this, it's a fucking godless work. That's why an adaptation like this needs a really good budget. You can't half-ass a Berserk adaptation. But if you kept watching the Trash Taste episode, Garnt says this.
Let me rephrase. Unadaptable with the current industry standards.
And I think he's kind of right. Anime today has become a stage to show really awesome animated scenes with jaw-dropping action and music that burns your ears, inject adrenaline into your veins, and fucking makes you want to bench press the fucking moon. And even though Berserk has a lot of fighting scenes and fucking amazing action set pieces, I don't think that is what makes the manga shine so bright. The fight scenes is not what people take from the manga, it's the character writing. their backstories, how they interact, and what made them what they are now. And I think one of the biggest strengths of the narrative, in my mind, is that Miura is so confident in his character writing that he doesn't need to feel patience with senseless action or dialogues. Sometimes your greatest weapon can be silence. These panels Miura gave us where the characters are used in silence, allowing themselves to breathe, enjoying their time together or alone. These panels are making all the weight behind all we have seen finally settles in our mind. Let's use the scene that made me realize Berserk was a special manga as an example. Spoilers for the first volumes of the manga. I think the first 3 ones. We start as heavy as we could start any story, with Guts being born by the hands of gravity after his mother is, well, you know. And a group of bandits see the kid and want to let him die. But a woman from the group picks him up and takes him to raise it as one of their own. Gambino, the leader of the group, being the father figure Guts will latch onto. Guts followed him and even wanted to learn how to fight to help Gambino in their mercenary activities. And even though Gambino looks like he cares and protects Guts, you'll find out his true colors and what a monster he really is in the next couple of minutes. In one of Gambino's, let's call them missions, the woman who picked up Guts at the beginning of the story, and which will come to be Guts' adoptive mother, dies of the plague, leaving Guts alone crying for his mother. When Gambino comes back, he blames Guts for what happened and starts to take his rage out on him from time to time. But Guts wants to prove he is useful for his adoptive father, so he starts training with a sword that is twice his length, since he's just a 6-year-old. So Gambino, to humor him, accepts to train him. Have a little spar, in which Guts starts to get his ass beaten to the humor of the other mercenaries. But after getting punched and kicked for a while, Guts takes advantage of its stature and gets a sneak attack that connects with Gambino's face. Gambino, not taking it well, swings at the 6-year-old, giving him his signature scar that will wait in our character for the rest of his life. After this happened, the rest of the mercenaries tell Gambino to chill. After all, he is just a child, and even though Gambino says he's sorry, his face tells a whole other story. Guts, after being beaten down so badly, he gets a fever and can't sleep, hearing others at the camp say he's the son of a dead woman, and a bad omen for the camp, and how everyone blames him for Jesus' death, and because he feels like the whole camp is against him, and they could get rid of him at any moment, he takes his sword and sleeps hugging it, to be ready for any danger, because it's not a question about if danger will come, it's a question of when. After realizing the danger he is in and how huge the gap is between his skill and the one needed to be of use, he starts training like crazy, swinging his sword to get the hang of it, even if his sword of choice towers him in height. Bleeding from his hands, he hopes to get better at it soon, and Gambino starts showing a soft spot for Guts, or as Guts says, maybe he's just doing it to free himself from the guilt of hurting a young child. When Guts turns 9 years old, Gambino accepts his help in the mercenary activities, in which Guts proves to be of use, overpowering full-grown adults on the enemy side, and Gambino starts using Guts, shown in how he only gives him a coin as a reward after risking his life in the battlefield. But Guts, deprived of any affection, he thinks that is his way of showing some to him. Because Guts has lived in this group for the past 3 years without anything happening to him, and he just proved his ability, he appears to feel safer and at home in the camp, now sleeping with his sword resting nearby instead of in his hands, like he did when he was 6 years old. But even though he tries to appear more confident, he still shivers at night, because in his mind, he knows while he's still there, in that camp, he is still in danger. But he hopes that all the danger he feels, it's all in his head. Sadly, that night, Gambino sells him to another mercenary in the group called Donovan.
This is disgusting. This is awful in every way. If I could kill it, I would.
And because God's sword is not in reach, he gets overpowered by Donovan, who tells him how Gambino sold his body to him. And Guts gets assaulted. Next morning, Guts wakes up with his sword in hand and stands in front of Gambino, who acts like he doesn't know what happened last night, playing with Guts' head, making him think Donovan was lying, but was he? I think Guts knows deep down Gambino sold him, so he takes out his frustration in a barrel, unable to express his anger and fear out loud, not even once. When the mercenaries' next mission comes, Guts proves himself to be as strong as ever, overpowering full-grown adults once more. And in this battle, Guts takes his revenge. At the middle of the fight, Guts shoots arrow at Donovan, and before killing him, he screams to Donovan to repeat who sold him, who sent him to his tent that night, wanting to finally confirm that Gambino is not a good person. But before Donovan can say anything, Guts kills him, almost like if he didn't want that confirmation. Like if he still wanted to believe that Gambino is the father figure he wants him to be. At the end of the mission, the enemy troops fire a cannonball at Guts and the mercenaries, leaving Gambino badly damaged, losing his leg in the aftermath. Guts looks at Gambino in his bed, looking down at him, like he said Gambino has been doing to him his whole life, and Guts breaks in tears, looking at the shattered body of his father figure, the only thing he had left. 2 years later, Guts, at 11 years old, is a powerhouse, killing enemy generals like it's nothing, and after the battle he goes home happy to show Gambino how strong he's become. Gambino, a broken man, sitting in a chair with his leg missing and a new dog, still beats Guts, in disdain of how strong and lively he looks. And the frustration piles up in Gambino, abusing of his pet and teammates too, at the point in which he starts resenting Guts for everything that has happened to him. He lost his position of the leader, as the strongest warrior, and now he can't even be respected by his own mercenary group. Gambino breaks and attacks Guts at night, screaming at him how he's a bad omen, how he's the son of a devil, he shouldn't be alive, and he confirms to Guts he sold him to Donovan all those years ago. Guts is still in denial, even though he has all the answers right in front of his eyes. And when Guts gets backed into a corner, he asks Gambino why. Why will he do something like that? Gambino, with a smile in his face, answers, because I hate you. After everything that Guts has been through, after all the damage inflicted in what is just a young child, physical and psychological, Guts, at the sight of his only comfort in life trying to kill him, breaks down. Guts doesn't want to believe it, and Guts defends himself, killing Gambino in the process, he himself destroying what he believed was the last thing he had. Guts, at the realization that what he thought to be his safety net in this senseless world was the one burning him all these years, he shuts down. He cannot believe what happened. In the commotion, a lamp fell down, beginning a fire. So the rest of the mercenaries go inside the tent and find Gambino dead in front of an unresponsive Guts. When one of the mercenaries tries to make Guts react, Guts, still in shock and in a defensive state of mind, swings at the mercenary, making everyone take an aggressive reaction towards him, believing the contrary of what just unraveled in that tent. They come to the conclusion that Guts killed Gambino in cold blood, that he's the ungrateful bastard that took all for granted. Guts, not trusting anyone anymore, steals a horse and runs from the camp. And everyone starts thinking like Gambino did. He's a bad omen, he's the devil, we need to get rid of him. So the whole camp starts chasing after Guts. And finally, an arrow is shot through Guts' chest, making him fall off a mountain. After all of this, Guts losing everything he had, even his camp trust, falling to what could be his death, instead of having that breaking moment a lot of characters have in other animes, instead of him yelling at the skies or punching something until he bleeds, instead of taking all of that energy out, Miura treats us with this panel. Silence. After all of those years of Guts not being able to sleep well, of feeling in danger all the time, he stays in the ground for a while, watching the stars, knowing that all his life until now is over. He can't go back. He doesn't have anyone to rely on. He just takes a breath for the first time in his life. An 11-year-old coming to this realization, and in this beautiful and painful way, made me understand that Berserk was nothing like other works I've read or watched. Berserk is Berserk, and nothing will be like it. If I could list a number of works that made me feel something in the same rails of Berserk, I would say something like One Piece, BoJack Horseman, Made in Abyss, Monster, and Full Metal. But every series I just listed hit a different spot that Berserk does, and none of them make use of silence in such a wonderful way as Berserk does, because Berserk makes full use of its medium, the manga. From that episode on, when you see Guts sleeping, you see him grabbing his sword, and we as an audience knows why. And just looking at this still image of Guts after a one-sided fight on their favor, we see how empty he is, how he battles with everything that happened to him. And like I said, each time we see him resting grabbing his sword, we get a quick refresher in our brain of all he's been through, over and over again. It will take Guts a lot of time to start opening up again to people, as we share with him moments of beauty that stay for a while with us. These moments of pure silence, instead of they being just a fleeting memory, we share the experience with him. The silence of the scene and how wonderful the composition is crafted let us become a part of it. And if you ask me, is there anyone else in the medium of animation right now who understands how important silence is in a work like this? I will say, yeah, there kind of is. There is an animator director that has shown over and over again that he can make his audience get invested in the story without having to fill the moments with senseless action or dialogues just to fill up, well, silences. And that director is Gendy Tartakovsky, the creator of Dexter's Lab, Samurai Jack, Primal, Unicorn Warriors Eternal, Symbiotic Titan, you know that series, and he also directed my favorite Star Wars piece of media. And if you watch Primal and Samurai Jack, I think you know exactly what I'm talking about. Samurai Jack is almost an experimental series that has a lot of adventures told in so many different ways that makes it a true masterpiece. There are episodes as simple as Jack fighting someone, but as he fights without dialogue, without he saying, "Oh, it's not working, I need to change my style, but damn, he's too strong." He just makes an expression, changes his style, and the enemy understands what's about to go down. And we as an audience understand too, because of the shots they decided to do, because of how Jack acted and the enemy reacted. We know everything that is going on without an inner monologue, because the direction is so clean. And there are episodes like the Light and Dark Ninja one where they fight in completely black and white environments, making them invisible without the use of any dialogue. And there are also episodes that make use of the dialogues they have so fucking smart. For example, the episode of the Bounty Hunters. In which a couple of bounty hunters share the story of how each of them would use their iconic hunting styles to take Jack down, only for another hunter to burst their bubble, telling them the flaws in their plan. And we follow each and every story, knowing each hunter's strengths and weaknesses, reaching the point in which all of them decide to join forces to patch each other's weaknesses and finally claim Jack's bounty. And I mean, of course you've seen this scene. The way the sound sells the tension, and the lack of dialogue tells us how prepared they think they are, and at the same time showing us how truly anxious they are to take on the fated samurai. Each sound is overpowering, as all of their senses are in override from the adrenaline of taking Jack down. And there is this like 4 seconds of the scene that really shows how wonderful silence can be. After we've been here stewing from the tension that the sound of the environment is giving us, the moment Jack's steps come into play, we have a shot of the bounty hunter squinting her eyes as she sees her target, and all of the sounds we've been hearing for the last 30 seconds stops, and we can only hear Jack steps. She is locked in. She isn't hearing anything else. She has her eyes on Jack, and Jack alone. And all of this storytelling that puts us in her shoes so fucking well can only be told because of the use of silence. And now, when we change into Jack's perspective, we hear everything: his steps, the birds, the water drops. And here is when one of the most important factors comes to play. After a while, there starts to be an absence of bird sounds. Something is not right, and Jack knows it, because he is listening to everything, not just what he believes to be important, giving him the advantage when he needs to be aware of all the bounty hunters at the same time, and the use of silence in this scene gives us the impression of everything happening in a mere second, which has a huge payoff when the director shows us this. The water drop that we have been hearing since the beginning, but because of all the emphasis it had since the beginning of the scene, we know it falls every 1 to 2 seconds, making this wonderful payoff, telling us that even though the bounty hunters spend a day making this plan, Jack beat them in a couple of seconds. And after everything is clear, how do we know he won? That the fight is over without Jack saying, "Is that it?" Bomba! He knows he won because of the birds. The birds come back to the scene, telling us, like in the beginning, that for now, everything is fine. He did it. But of course, after we get a fake out of the main character of this episode, willing to take a 1v1, no items, final destination, Fox only against Jack. But without dialogue, without being able to see Jack's face, and without even sound effects, we get all the thought process of the character, realizing she can't take on him. And we get this sense of anxiety in the lack of sound effects. She's out of herself. She's done. Episodes like this and the whole Primal series that is done without a single fucking dialogue in its entirety is what really makes me believe if you want to study the effect of silence in media, you should watch the series made by Tartakovsky. Knowing how important the silences are in Berserk and looking at the work of Tartakovsky and how close the 97 adaptation was to being a Berserk experience, I think it's good to say Berserk is adaptable. Directors just need to start thinking outside of the norm of today's anime standards that take a story that isn't really good and full of holes and crutches in narrative, but dress them in this magnificent animation that is achievable by painting them with the sweat and blood of overworked staff, and start really taking the time the work needs to make a slow burn effective that really shines in the characters. BoJack Horseman, it's not filled with Sakuga animation, you know? We are not going to take any scene from BoJack Horseman and make an HMV with Linkin Park music, but we could put the whole Free Churro episode and feel our stomach eat himself because of how powerful the characterization is. It's amazing how much we understand and connect with the character, even if we haven't experienced anything that has happened in the show, but we experience it through a wonderful POV of a character really well written, and that's why silence is important in BoJack too. Yeah, they talk a lot,
purportedly falling short of shoring up 4-quadrant support.
Makes perfect sense so far.
and they do a lot of wacky, zany jokes, but it is part of the narrative because BoJack is doing everything in his power to never be alone with his thoughts, because we know what happens when he is. We know how dangerous that silence is in BoJack Horseman. That's why when the series ends in a couple of minutes of silence without anything going wrong, we understand that maybe, and only maybe, everything is going to be just fine. And there is a series that proves that silence and slow burn character stories can actually work and be effective in today's public. Look at how popular Frieren has become. It's a wonderful anime that I can't recommend enough. This series has its battles in a far place in their priorities list. We tune in to watch the characters grow. See Fern realizing how different it must be to someone nearly immortal to experience the pass of time. And likewise to Frieren, she always takes her time. But now that a human life is in her hands, she needs to prioritize her, learning how to communicate and express herself to someone that sees life in a different spectrum. And also realize that the time she spent with others is worth more than a limitless life. The wonderful animation of the series is used to give an accent to what could be a daily activity, to show how much we need to be in the moment and never let those 30 minutes we share with others be only a fleeting memory. Berserk has a lot of gore and gruesome moments, but they are heavily contrasted by the moments of character work and silence. And without this contrast, the fight scenes wouldn't feel so raw. When we fight with no stop in sight, the fights might lose some punch to them. But if we build up the fight and have a moment to breathe, and make the characters and the reader feel like the world is going to come to a stop in the next battle that lies beyond, well, we are crafting a magnificent experience. After all, there is no silence like the silence before the war. And until we can have that silence in a world that keeps making noise, until we realize how powerful silence can be, Berserk is going to be adaptable.